Teachers making a career transition into instructional design have so many skills that they can leverage immediately. And in this session today, I'm going to tell you exactly what skills you have as a teacher that you can bring directly into your instructional design job. So stick with me till the end, and I will share those with you. And I'm going to share the top two skills that you have as a teacher that immediately bring value. All right, so this is such a personal topic for me because if you've been following me for any period of time, then you know that, like many of you, I used to be a classroom teacher. I taught fifth grade in Greenville, Texas. I taught social studies and science. So I made that transition several years ago. And whenever I made the transition, I didn't even know what instructional design was. So I had no idea what skills I had that could be immediately applied to another position. So what I did was I went out and I started looking at every job posting that was in my local area and reading through all the different skill requirements, tool requirements, until one day I finally landed upon a job that I was like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. I think that this is the job that I am going to apply for. So I literally went through every job. And by the time that we finish this session today, I hope that you're thinking things like, oh, I can do that. Oh, I didn't know I had that skill. Oh, yeah, I can do that. So that is my goal, that by the end of our session today, our teachers are going to know some of the skills that they can bring into an instructional design job that provide immediate value. Now, before we get started with that, I do want to start with a quote about teaching because I really did love teaching. It was one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, right? So that quote is, teachers have three loves: the love of learning, the love of learners, and the love of bringing those first two loves together. And the good news is that even if you have made the decision to leave the classroom, you still get to hold on to these two loves. As an instructional designer, you're always in a learning phase. There's always something new to learn, and you still get to work with learners. But instead of them being kids, now you're going to be working with adult learners. So I'm excited to talk to you about a career opportunity that allows you to hold on to those loves. So let's get started with a question, and you can drop this into the comments, your response. I want you to think about, what are the skills that you have today as a teacher that you believe would be relevant in an instructional design job based on what you know about instructional design. And if you are brand new to this topic of instructional design, let me just tell you very quickly, while you are dropping into the comments what you think you can leverage. Well, let me tell you what instructional design is. So as instructional designers, we get to work with business owners, key stakeholders, subject matter experts, topic experts to create learning experiences. And we create learning experiences oftentimes for employees in an organization or for people who are purchasing a product from an organization. So thinking about creating learning experiences for adult learners, think about what skills you have as a teacher coming out of the classroom that would apply to creating learning experiences for adult learners. So go ahead and drop that into the comments, and I'll come back and look at those. So let's get started. The skill number one that you can leverage from your teaching role that provides immediate value in an instructional design job is project management. Now, you might think to yourself, Shawntay, I am not a project manager. I am a teacher. But I'm going to tell you right now that as a teacher, you are a great project manager, even if you don't know. If you just think about all the different tasks that you had to manage in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year to get through that year successfully to help develop those students, you will find that you have a lot of project management expertise. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So as you can see on the screen, as a teacher, you did a lot of planning, right? You had to plan out the entire year. How are you going to educate all the students that you have in your class or on your team? to meet all of those state standards. So you had to take that, then you had to break it down by term, right? If you had 6 weeks or you were in a 9-week cycle, you had to break that up into chunks to get through the entire year to make sure that you covered every single standard by the end of the year. So then you took that term and you broke it up into weekly planning. And then you took that week and you broke it down into daily planning. So you had to have a good understanding of what was required of you. You had to know what had to be taught by when, right? And then you had to keep tracking your progress towards that. Well, that, my friend, is project management. So the Association of Project Management actually defines project management as the application of processes, methods, skills, and knowledge and experience to achieve a specific project objective. So as a teacher, your objective was to successfully educate all those students on the standards, right? Well, in project management, it might be to deliver a course or to deliver a program or to create a video. So the deliverables are different, but the planning and the tracking of the progress are the same. So the good news is all that planning that you did as a teacher immediately applies to instructional design because you're going to do a lot of planning. Now, where it is a little bit different in some areas that you might have to develop your skills as an instructional designer coming out of the classroom, or we have to think about things like, what is the timeline? What's the budget? What's in scope of this project? And if you haven't yet seen our project management for instructional designer video, go check that out because we have a lot of good information in it for you about project management. Also, another skill that you're going to have to get focused in on is task identification and assigning owners to those different tasks. So whenever we say task identification, what we're really talking about is looking at a project and identifying every single task that needs to be completed in order for that project to be successfully delivered on time. And then when we say owner, that means that we just assign someone to be responsible for that task. So as a teacher, a lot of times you had a lot of autonomy in your class and you were just you by yourself managing all those students. Well, whenever you make that shift into instructional design, you're not always by yourself. Sometimes you're working with a team and people have different responsibilities or different tasks that they're responsible for. We also do sprint planning if you work in agile project management. So sprint planning means that we just plan our work for 2 weeks. We do daily stand-ups, and then we, as an instructional designer, you might be responsible for learning some different project management methodologies, not like learning them in depth where you need to go out and get your PMP certification, nothing like that, but you at least have to have the basic understanding of whatever methodology is used in that organization. And of course, you're going to have to learn some of the tools to help you manage your projects. But the good news is that you have a lot of skills that you can leverage from your classroom experience as a teacher immediately in an instructional design job. So that's pretty exciting, right? I think so. Skill number 2 that you can leverage from your teaching role as an instructional designer is communication. We do a lot of communicating as a teacher, right? We are communicating with the students all throughout the day, trying to bring them back into the conversation, trying to guide them through the lesson. We're working with parents, we're working with other teachers, and we're communicating with our administrators. So it's not just who we communicate with, but we're also varying our communication and flexing our communication to meet the needs of those specific situations, right? There is a difference in how you approach an upset teacher or an upset parent versus a happy parent. So you get to use those skills in your instructional design job too. The good news is that these are almost equal in this transition. So instead of working with students, you might have to communicate with our learners or end users. They might help you actually build a learning experience. Instead of parents and teachers, you're working with your L&D team. By L&D, I mean the learning and development team. So everybody that's on the team that creates learning experiences. Instead of administration, you might be working with your stakeholders, business owners, the leadership team, but it's still pretty much the same. So you're just going to be able to use those skills, those transition immediately and beautifully. Now, one area that might be just a little bit different is our subject matter experts. So, as a teacher, you might not have had to go out and work with subject matter experts to help you develop curriculum. So, that will be something that is new that you'll want to start working on as an instructional designer to think about how might I interview someone to help me come up with a lesson plan? What are the types of questions that I would ask to keep them focused on that need to know content versus that nice to know content? Another area related to communication is as teachers, we use things like emails, messaging, phone. We worked in a learning management system, a grade book. We might have had online groups or, maybe a class website. The good news is that all of these transition as well, because as an instructional designer, you're going to be using emails, you're going to be sending messages, you're going to have phone conversations, you're going to have video conversations. You will work in a learning management system. You might have online communities that you are supporting as a part of the L&D team. And you might post information on the company's intranet. So the intranet is different than the internet in the sense of it's inside the company. So it works like an internet does, but it's internal. So a lot of times we post information out on our company intranet about things that are happening inside of the company related to learning and development. Skill number 3 that you can immediately leverage from your teaching role in a career in instructional design is collaboration. We do a lot of collaboration. We collaborate with other members of the team. We collaborate with other departments to understand their needs. We collaborate with our subject matter experts, right? So we do a lot of collaboration. And if you haven't seen our video that Katie Short, our Director of Learning Solutions, created on ID project collaboration, I encourage you to go out and check that out because there are a lot of really great tips about how you can collaborate effectively to ensure that your project is a success. So again, as a teacher, we communicate with students, parents, teachers, and administrators. That's no surprise to you. As an instructional designer, we are collaborating with our end users. Again, those are our learners. We collaborate with the L&D team. We collaborate with the leadership team. And as I said just a second ago, we also have to collaborate with our subject matter experts, and we collaborate with our stakeholders and our business owners. So whenever we use the term business owners, we're not talking about the owner of a business. We're talking about someone who owns a section of the business inside of the company. So let's say it's the head of marketing. So they might be the business owner for any L&D project that we create that they are sponsoring. So we call them a business owner. But it can also be used to reference the actual owner of a company. But I just wanted to give you that clarification. Skill number 4 that you can leverage as an instructional designer immediately in your instructional design job is technology. As a teacher, you probably used a lot of technology. And guess what? You're going to use a lot as an instructional designer too. So as a teacher, you were using learning management systems, grade books. You might have used interactivity tools like Kahoot or Poll Everywhere. We either use Google Suite or Microsoft Suite inside of our work, depending on what the district has brought in. We use virtual classrooms like Google Classrooms. We use smart boards. We might use laptops and tablets. And a lot of times we're also the tech support for those things, right? The good news is you don't really have to be tech support whenever you move into an L&D role. There's usually a department that is dedicated to that. So that's really good. You don't have to focus on that. And as an instructional designer, we're still going to use the learning management system. It's going to be a different learning management system than what you see in education, but we still use them. So the principles are very similar. We're still going to use interactivity tools, but we might have a bigger range to choose from. So it might be Mentimeter, which is a new one that I learned about back in May whenever I went to the ATD conference. Kahoot, PullEv. Maybe we use AHA Slides, something like that, right? So we're still using those interactivity tools to engage our learners. We're also still going to either be using Google or Microsoft, depending on what the organization has. And we're still going to be using virtual session platforms like Zoom or Google again, right? So we still have very similar tools in our instructional design roles, but they might have a different function or just a little bit different functionality. Now, we're also going to have to build our skills in the area of technology because we're going to be using project management tools. So we're going to have to learn some new software, multimedia tools. So maybe we have to get really good at developing templates in Google Slides or in PowerPoint, or creating instructional videos. So maybe it's Camtasia, Adobe Premiere Pro, or my new favorite, Descript. We also have to work on authoring tools. So we're going to be learning Storyline 360, Rise, or maybe Captivate, or some other authoring tool. And the newest one on the scene that is big, that I feel like I should have put this at the top of the list, it is AI. We absolutely need to know how to leverage AI to help expedite some of our processes, such as researching, analyzing, structuring our content, coming up with better ways to write our learning objectives and outcomes and things like that. So we have a lot of overlap between teaching and instructional design when it comes to technology, but we have a few other areas that we're going to want to add into the mix. All right, so skill number 5 that you can leverage as a teacher coming out of the classroom into a job in instructional design is teaching. So believe it or not, you can use your teaching skills as an instructional designer. So let's explore how you can do that. As a teacher, you teach content. That is what your day is about, right? So you're flexing the content, you're managing the behavior of your students, you are engaging the learners, you're doing formative assessments, you are creating that positive learning environment so that that learning experience goes as well as it can. And you're setting up all the practice, right? And it might be a different kind of practice. Like it could be doing a round robin. It can be a pair and share. It could be a get up and move around. Like I really loved all those Kagan strategies. So I don't know if y'all know what those are, but those were really fun. I love those whenever I was teaching. Now, the good news is, as an instructional designer, you are going to use all those teaching skills because as an instructional designer, we often have to do facilitation too. So sometimes we are the creator of the content and then we are the trainer of the content. Or, we're going to get called in to do some sort of special workshop. So everything that you did to actually teach the content with your students, you can bring those skills in to your instructional design process. And you can use those teaching skills to really help you write effective and engaging curriculum, but now for adult learners instead of students. So as a teacher, and I always say this, like if you ever have any kind of facilitation skills or background, or you're a teacher and you've got that kind of background, then you can imagine how when you're delivering the content, like you can kind of visualize the room and imagine how that might play out. That is a huge benefit to instructional designers because you can be writing the content in that way. Like, oh, I know I cannot lecture for 30 minutes. They're going to snooze on me. So I've got to make some adaptations for this. And you can write really great facilitator instructions because you have actually facilitated. You did it all day long, 5 days a week for however many years you were teaching. You were standing at the front of the room, you were facilitating, and you had to keep in mind, like, how do I pull them in? How do I change it up? How do I keep them from getting, how do I, handle the behavior in the room? You have to do all of that as an instructional designer. You have to set up that learning experience to help that facilitator keep all those adult learners engaged in the same way that you would do with students. But now we're just going to call it things. We're going to say adult learning. We're going to say class or room management and things like that. All right. Skill number 6 that you can immediately leverage as a teacher making the transition into instructional design is curriculum development. In fact, I believe this to be the number one skill that you are bringing from your classroom experience into your instructional design role. And just so you know, I think that teaching takes the number two spot. Now, these are just the opinions of me. No one has to agree with me, but I'm going to tell you why I think curriculum development is your number one skill. So as a teacher, you were responsible for selecting content and resources, designing lessons that map to state standards. You had to adapt and customize that content based on who you had in your classroom. You had to create learning activities to keep them engaged and most likely within a budget, because a lot of times we had to fund our own activities. And we often have to write assessment questions, right? Just to assess where our students are. Now, some of you might be lucky enough to work in a district where all of that is done for you. But many of us were not. Many of us had a role in this. The great news is that as an instructional designer, all of that pulls in. Your audience is different, and the tools that you are building in are different, but that skill set is completely relevant to your new job. As an instructional designer, you're still going to be selecting content, resources that you need for researching to build that curriculum. You're still designing content that maps, just instead of mapping to state standards, now you're mapping to learning objectives, learning outcomes, key performance indicators, right? You still have to adapt and customize the content. You're still creating engagement activities, and you're still going to write assessment questions. So all of this is a pull through. The one area that we're going to add to this related to curriculum development is interviewing subject matter experts. As a teacher, again, you did a lot of this on your own, but whenever you move into corporate instructional design or freelance instructional design, and even higher ed instructional design, sometimes we get paired with subject matter experts who are experts in that topic area while you're the expert in how learners learn. So you have to learn how to work with the subject matter expert to pull out all the need to know information that helps support those objectives and those outcomes that you're going to be mapping to. You've also got to create a skill around navigating how to parse out important information from that nice to know information. A lot of times SMEs think everything is important, and so they want to cover everything. But you can't always do that without causing sessions to get really long or without causing cognitive overload. So as the instructional designer, you're going to be in that expert seat helping to navigate that. So that's a skill that you will be developing as you're making your transition out of the classroom into instructional design. So let's do a quick recap. These are the 6 skills that you can leverage as an instructional designer. So we have project management, communication, collaboration, technology, teaching, and of course, curriculum development. And as I said before, curriculum development, I believe, is to be your number one skill that you can leverage from your teaching experience as an instructional designer. And in that second place spot is teaching. So you can leverage all 6 of these skill bucket areas as you are making your transition out of teaching into instructional design. So I hope that you find that to be very exciting. You are not starting from scratch. You have a really solid foundation that you can build upon to make that transition a little bit easier. Again, remember to go back and check out our project management for instructional designers video and to check out our ID project collaboration video so that you can get more education in this area about how you can make your transition from teaching to instructional design.